Good day, everyone. I'm Archana Ramamurthy, Chief Technology Officer North America for Workday. COVID-19 has dramatically changed the landscape for many government agencies that are already in the midst of digital transformation. As technology continues to disrupt and change constituent expectations at a furious rate, government CIOs are continually thinking about revamping and reinventing their digital strategy. Despite all the challenges brought on by COVID-19 and other natural disasters like hurricanes, the state of Iowa remains committed to digital transformation and is reimagining the workplace to more effectively serve its people. I'm joined together by Annette Dunn, the Chief Information Officer for the state of Iowa. Our goal for today is to have a lively discussion on how Annette and her team are thinking about their digital strategy and reimagining the workplace to effectively serve the state of Iowa. Annette, thank you for joining us today. Could you start by introducing yourself and giving us an overview of the number of citizens you serve, employee count, and agencies for the state of Iowa?
Absolutely. As you said, my name is Annette Dunn. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the state of Iowa, the great state of Iowa. And we have about 3.2 million population. And we oversee about 150 customers. We do have the ability per code of Iowa to serve multiple municipalities, such as cities, counties, school districts. We haven't expanded into that very much, but we do have the ability to do that if we chose to. We have between 112 and 161 full-time employees. It depends on what our budget is for any given year. And our budget runs about $65 million, and that doesn't count for pass-through funding, for buying software for somebody and then they reimburse us.
Great.
And then we have about 59 contractors, and that fluctuates depending on projects.
That's very interesting. I feel like every government agency is different and the funding has a huge impact on a lot of these numbers. And,
yes,
I was actually looking at your website a little bit, and your office has a great vision. Enabling digital transformation of government through collaboration and innovation, specifically to deliver citizen-centric solutions. Maybe could you talk about the top 3 or 4 initiatives that you're focusing on to modernize legacy technology?
Absolutely. So what are the very main things that we have to do? It's not a matter of choice, but necessity is moving our data center. So moving into a new modernized data center for security reasons, but also cloud services, SaaS-based services. We have to move into our new data center due to a flood of 2019. It really affected our infrastructure, but it also is an aging building, so it gets into a security issue for us. One of the other major initiatives for us is our master data management, which I'm very excited to get going. We just finished the RFP for that. We're awarding the contract soon. We also have an e-government portal that will get into payment portal and application portal. But our biggest one that we are doing, which has never been done in the state of Iowa, is our statewide ERP system, which we have selected Workday. I was previously the CIO at Iowa DOT, and we implemented Workday there. And the governor loved that initiative and asked me to do it statewide.
That's awesome. I feel like the initiatives like data center sort of, redoing or initiatives around ERP systems are huge changes for states. So I'm sure that's a huge undertaking for you as well.
It is a huge undertaking. It takes a lot of staff. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of time and patience.
Yeah, and has COVID affected any of these plans in general, and how have you been able to support your employees and contractors through this process?
Because of the flood of 2019, most of our staff went and was working remotely due to the flood to our office and our data center. So we were in a unique position that we were already looking at working remotely, and we were actually just transitioning staff back into our office. So we have the unique ability as an agency, but not as a state, to already understand and how to scramble and get everyone's get their VPN working and their laptops and so forth. But it was a scramble for us to get that statewide and really get laptops for everyone, 100% VPN into the network, we escalated those and moved those things along. It took everyone's effort to get it. I did have a little bit of an insight into that we might be going in this direction because my son is in the military, and they started calling back the military people who were on leave. So I had an idea that we were going to go remotely very quickly. That being said, I did a daily check-in with all of our supervisors every morning. That's how we started our day off. What did they need? What was going on? Did we have any sick employees? Did they need anything from me? Did we need anything that they've been hearing about? Did we have any issues? And then I also did regularly did email newsletters out to my staff.
Yeah.
We had some of a second shift in our print shop, so I didn't want to leave them out by doing video chats. Although video chats were an option, I chose to do the newsletter so I didn't feel like the second shift were left out, and they were a smaller amount of the staff, so I thought the newsletters was probably a better option for us. But around the end of March, you start focusing in on your big efforts again. The big things you have going on, like Workday and our MGM and our eGov portal. So we had to go back and start refocusing some of those efforts on the big ticket items.
Yeah, it's very interesting how a lot of companies and agencies at this point have started focusing more on communication. I think it's unfortunate that you've had the chance to do this before, but I think the one good thing is you're now able to take those learnings from before and incorporate them now. Even with the fires that we have in California, we have unstable internet connections, some things that are just out of our control with respect to electricity and other things, but being able to support employees through this process is really very important.
It is definitely our biggest asset.
And you talked about upgrading systems in general. So a lot of outdated on-prem systems definitely require constant upgrades, and some of the older versions are not even supported anymore. What's your take on integrated cloud platforms for the future of government?
I think it's going to be really important, first of all, that governments cannot continue to work in silo. We have to be able to harvest data and be nimble. We have to make data-driven decisions. I think that we are moving in that direction. It takes time and money, and it takes also political support to be able to do that. And that's really important in state government. And I feel like I have 100% of the governor's support in moving in this direction. One of the things that we're looking at, and it's going to be a huge benefit to us, is Workday, for example. We will now have all of our HR and finance on one platform. We're on multiple different platforms right now, and most of our agencies are actually doing budgeting in Excel spreadsheets. And so assuming they can get to their Excel spreadsheets, they would then submit those and through email and so forth. And I think that one of the ways that we really look at moving that to a cloud-based services is going to be beneficial to us because it's mobile, it's dynamic. In these days where we are getting budgets that may need to change on the fly because of the way the economy is going, we really can take a lot of those situations and try and run some different models with them. So I'm really looking forward to the dynamic budgeting, and that would have helped during the COVID situation, as well as the MDM and our e-government portal, really kind of moving some of those to cloud-based services and innovating us, helping us be nimble, helping us make decisions on that data.
And could you tell me a little bit about the mobile usage within state government? Is that high? Are people now moving more towards being mobile first in the workforce?
I would say they are moving to mobile first, and I actually do believe that we will probably reevaluate our footprint in state government as far as business or as far as physical structures. Where are we at? Do we need them anymore? That's just my speculation. No conversations have been had about that, but I do think that we are thinking mobile first.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you also bring up a very, very interesting point with respect to fragmented ecosystems and also Excel spreadsheets going around. There are two key points that I can think of, both from a security perspective, that's not great. And from a fragmented ecosystem perspective, it makes it impossible for people to get the right data at the right time. And fragmented data across outdated IT systems and fragmented workforce are two of the biggest problems that both government agencies and corporate companies are facing today. And you talked a little bit about aggregating HR, financial, payroll data to deliver insights. Could you talk about the Workday implementation in general, and what information have you been able to already sort of get with the Department of Transportation and now with the Iowa state government?
So I think that the data center flood was a big issue for this. It's a security issue for us. And we really had to look at that physical infrastructure, data security, integration. But Workday will solve those issues for us by moving it into a more agile and scalable environment. And I believe that that continues to help us be mobile. It also helps us to be dynamic. But one of the things that I think it was kind of a shocker, and I don't know if this answers your question or not, but one of the things that was a shocker was that when we began our Workday adventure at the DOT, when I was a CIO there, we had to have the Federal Highway Administration come in and approve the system. They had not heard of Workday. They weren't aware of Workday. They like on-prem. They wanted to know types of services because they wanted to know it was secure. And so I think they had a little bit of gray area for them. So we really had to educate them and bring them along and help them as the federal government understand that this actually is better for us and helps us to be more nimble, and it's more secure for us. And so that took a little bit of hand-holding, but we brought them along in the process, and I think that really helped.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think a lot of people who are used to on-prem systems think that the control that they have, because those systems are hosted within their environment, it gives them a false sense of security in some sense. Cloud systems, on the other hand, are constantly upgrading. They're constantly thinking about bringing the best in breed for all of their customers. You're always on the latest version of the software. You're also able to take advantage of some of the latest standards that are available from a security perspective. That could be SAML, it could be OpenID, it could be anything that's put out by the W3C or even by the FIDO Alliance with respect to authentication, identity management, or authorization. So it's been a very interesting shift, but we've definitely seen a lot of companies come out of that mindset of being on-prem to actually trusting and moving to the cloud in the past few years.
Yeah, one of the examples that I give all the time is we're all doing banking. We're all doing loans online. And in a sense, some of those are really cloud-based services in a way. It depends on what you're using and how you're using it. And so it was many times just educating people, like, we're already doing this. It's just putting us in a different position that the federal and state government wasn't used to seeing innovation.
Yeah, that's very true. And the same is true even with data, right? If you have a fragmented ecosystem, you're going to have an analyst who's trying to pull together information from all of these disparate systems and putting that together for somebody to view. Decision making becomes hard. The business folks are not able to get that information. You are always reliant on someone to build that. IT is, bombarded with all of these requests. Could you talk a little bit about your data strategy, how you're thinking about data strategy for the next few years, and how on the HR and financial space you're utilizing Workday for it? And I see a smile, so.
Well, the reason why I'm laughing is because if COVID did not help state CIOs at a minimum understand the importance of data, I don't know what would. We all were working, most of us, if not all of us, were working remotely in all of our states due to the pandemic. And we all realized we had very fragmented data, systems that weren't communicating with each other. There was a huge demand for data. Public health data, I'll start there actually. In the public health data, we had very antiquated systems. And we figured that out very quickly. We figured out servers that had not been updated. How are we getting our lab information transferred in? How are we getting that information back out to the public, which the public demands that? They demand that it's secure and they demand that they have the information. Not to mention also having different agencies be able to harvest different pieces of information that help them make decisions. For example, COVID was a public health issue, but it quickly became a state issue, Department of Education, Department of Corrections, Department of Inspection and Appeals issue. And we were all talking about things, but they didn't know each other's data. But I knew some of their data because I could see it because we were managing it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, we could put all of this on a map and then we all could be using the same map and we could be using different layers. And so I think it really highlighted the fact that we have to get into dynamic type of data, which also then proved our point about budgeting. And it gets us into that model of the Workday budgeting. We knew that we were going to have some crisis financially, or we thought we might. Right now, we had to find those spreadsheets. We had to figure out who's where on which spreadsheet and which budget we're on. We were in the middle of a legislative session. We hadn't even made their allocations. They didn't come back till June and make those. It was very difficult. It was very difficult not having Workday already implemented. And so I really think that between Workday, standardizing our data, we all have access to that data and be able to make us more nimble. And the Master Data Management Initiative, we will be light years away further than we are today. I will literally be able to have breathe a sigh of relief when we implement these things and really get them where they need to be.
That is incredible and awesome. Thank you for talking about this, because it's not just government agencies. There are several people that were not data reliant before, but COVID has forced them to be data first, because it's exactly what you're talking about. Different departments are using different versions of the data. They're not in sync. They're in spreadsheets. They're getting passed around. Who knows what version of the spreadsheet people have to take decisions. And at the end of the day, if you can empower business to actually have the right information at the right time, that's going to enable better decision making overall for the organization.
Absolutely.
And talking a little bit about cloud software solutions in general, you're paving the way for actually, using more cloud software systems and embracing ERP upgrades that are usually huge and have significant impact across the business in general. Could you talk about how you were able to pave the way, and how did you conduct the investigation with respect to capabilities of newer technologies, both here, and you talked about how your implementation in DOT is what brought this over to the state of Iowa. So what investigation processes that you follow that you would ask other government agencies to do?
So actually, this all came about because Iowa State University was looking for a new ERP system, and we have close contact with them, then their CIO at the time. And he asked me to be on their review committee, and I was looking through his RFP, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's really looking for something innovative here in his RFP. I think he's on to something. And he said, could you be on our evaluation committee? I just want to make sure we have a full view of this. And I said, I think we need this. We've been talking about a new ERP system. Does your RFP actually have it so we can buy off of it? He said, absolutely, we bid it that way, but can you be on the evaluation committee? And I him-hawed about it because, it takes a lot of time. And I thought, yes, I want to do this. So he really had done the homework more than we had. And so when we went into the evaluation process, I walked out of there and he said, so what did you think? Because we got to see several different presentations. And when I saw Workday, myself and another staff member, the very first thing that came to mind is, do we want an old car with a new engine, or do we want a new car? And so we really had to think about this differently. And I knew it was going to be somewhat of a political struggle for people to think out of the box and make them understand that this was a secure way of doing things. So I think the most important thing to think about is think out of the box. Don't always do what you've always done, because it doesn't necessarily make sense. You need to be thinking 5 to 10 years down the road of what that looks like. And what do the younger generations expect from that? Mobile capabilities for doing their timesheet or for updating their budget situation. And then what do you think your leaders want out of an ERP, and do you need to retool and re-educate them? So I think those are really some of the things that you have to think about, but you do have to be thinking ahead, definitely have to be thinking down the road. I think in mobile capabilities has actually forced us to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thinking ahead and thinking about what the next 10 to 15 years of the organization needs versus, what's going to fulfill the checkbox list of things that you have today is definitely important. And you touched upon two key aspects. Employee experience. How do you make sure people can use this every day and get whatever they need to get out of the system? And second, how does business operate and how can you actually leverage the system to get the best information about how your business is running, be it operational information, employee information, financial information. You should be able to plan, execute, and analyze with the system that you have. And that's an important capability to have.
Very important.
Yeah, and you talked about, the process of evaluation.
One of the things I thought about was it's interesting that in state and federal government, we don't think of it like a business. And I think we need to change that model and treat it like a business. Our customers, being our citizens, they expect us to be innovative.
Absolutely. No, that's very true. And the first part of the battle is the evaluation process, right? Like understanding what kind of application you want to have, understanding what you want to achieve in the next 10 years. The second part is actually implementing a new ERP system. And you were in a very unique situation, even though you've had experience doing this with Department of Transportation. How did you actually manage to do, or you're continuing to do a virtual implementation with Workday? Because even when I think about some of the older ERP systems that are available, one implementation is very different from another, and it's hard to sort of even think about doing a virtual implementation. So could you talk a little bit about that?
I think that the best way to answer this is with the lessons learned. I never expected that we'd be doing a virtual implementation, but you have to be able to anticipate and deal with whatever life brings you. We all know that. And I think that one of the things that was like a lesson learned was that you have to plan. And the best way to plan doesn't mean that's the way it's going to go. Virtual implementation. So taking the time to hire a company, clean up your data, get where you need to be with your data, because if your data is not standardized and not cleaned up, and let me tell you, after years in state government, ours was a mess. That is so, so important to get that right. And then implementing a change management and implementation and change management plans really are so important during an implementation like this. And you have to be nimble and be able to change those things. But a virtual implementation was only possible because one of the things, and I kind of threw a loop at Workday, was that I had already implemented this at DOT, or we were in the midst of implementing it. And I said, oh, by the way, we're going to do this statewide now that I'm state CIO. And I want to take the DOT's tenant and I want to shift it to a statewide tenant. And I think I threw them for a loop there. So I don't think that we would have been able to do that and do a virtual implementation had we not already had that tenant set up at the DOT. But I knew it could work. I like to challenge people, including myself. And I have to say I probably frustrated Workday, but they were champs. They got it done. And here we are. We're about ready to implement our HCM or HR portion of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You guys are very, very technology forward. And as I was thinking about everything that you said so far, my next thought and question is, technology evolves. We're seeing newer and newer technologies come up, like chatbots, there's machine learning. There's a better way for folks to understand, how to improve diversity or create talent retention strategies or identify anomalies in journal line entries or other areas within the finance process. When you think about the next few years for the state of Iowa, where does your modernization journey take you?
Well, I mentioned some of the efforts, But I think that along with those efforts, I think there are cost savings and efficiencies to be had from implementing some of these new systems and new processes and really looking at our data. I also believe that we will be more nimble to be able to react to things like the pandemic. For example, with our e-government portal, the e-government portal vision that we're looking at would actually, for lack of a better term, give us something like a payment portal that Amazon has, and it knows your identity and it can store your information. We don't have to change everybody's website in state government, but we really attach it if somebody's checking out, and then it keeps their identity. It may be able to also remind them of your driver's license is coming due, your fishing license is coming due. Do you want to do all these things at one time? And your professional license is due. So I really think we can go there. And then my vision for that is, if we were in this pandemic situation and already had some of these things implemented, the e-government portal could eventually also be an application portal for us. And my example for that is, let's say I was laid off during the pandemic and I go into workforce development online and I fill out my unemployment information. The unemployment information then says, hey, it appears to us that you might be eligible for something like food assistance. Do you want us to share your information with that state agency? And you say, yes, I want to, and it shares as much information as it can. And then it takes you over to that part of the portal and says, here's the rest of the information that you need to fill out. And oh, by the way, your county offers this service to people that looks like you qualify. Would you like us to share that information with them? So I really think we need to get nimble like that to be able to give that data-driven, customer-centric services to citizens, and they expect that type of innovation.
Yeah, that's incredible, especially when you have identity management sort of streamlined, and if you have a single way to identify a person and connect them to the services that you're trying to offer as a government agency, it becomes much easier then to personalize that experience for people. You can then use machine learning or other techniques to say, it looks like you're trying to do this. There are also two other things that might be relevant to you that you should probably take a look at and incorporate. That's very interesting that you're thinking in those lines to serve people and give them what they want, especially in today's day and age where people are all used to recommendations on Netflix. I'm spending so much more time on Netflix than I ever used to. So that's very interesting.
Yes, and I'm very excited to get all of them going. I'm probably driving everybody on my staff crazy with all the new initiatives and innovation, but I'm so excited to get us moving down the road.
No, absolutely. And it was a pleasure chatting with you today and understanding your goals and your path for effectively modernizing digital strategy for the state of Iowa. I think it's more important than ever that government organizations and states are thinking about building agile digital strategy and their path to modernization of IT to emerge stronger as our economy recovers from everything that's going on today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and stay safe.